Hello and welcome to Philosophy Roulette number 98 apparently. So number 98 where we read philosophy papers and review them live on air. And I don't know what I'm going to get, that's why it's roulette. Although if you send me something then I'll read that too because I don't know what that is either. So please send me stuff that's good, otherwise I'm just at the mercy of the internet, which is fine too. Agriculture and human values, how do you publish this amount? I don't read them because I don't read sciencey stuff, because sciencey stuff is wow, look at that, a lot of stuff. AI in society, ooh, let's go see what they have. I've read stuff from them before. Let's see, get the forthcoming papers. It has to be on the shorter. There's one of these journals that has small font and like double column, so it has to be a shorter paper from this journal. Ooh, a 3-page paper. So that's like 6 or 7. Let's see if we got the rise of artificial intelligence and the crisis of moral passivity. And you can always tell by the huge amounts of downloads that is here. So let's do this one then. That's cool. So. And if you are good enough to join me live, which I hope you will someday, you can, like, the link is not here when you show up, you can always type !paper, and that will load the that link back up, so you can grab the paper and follow along if you so wish live. Cool. Alright, and we're good to go. That worked out nicely. Alright. Here we go for the rise of artificial intelligence. It is an understatement to say that artificial intelligence is being used more and more in our world. Is it? I don't know. Even though artificial intelligence technology has not reached anywhere near its full potential, several writers look at the distant future and envision all sorts of different impacts on humans. I mean, I just watched Terminator 2 because that's like basically the future. Anyway, John Danaher, 2019, discusses one particular impact on humanity, Arnold Schwarzenegger, defending the thesis that the rise of AI and robots will suppress our moral agency and increase the expression of moral patiency. What's moral patiency? I don't know. Danaher argues for this by contending that the dramatic increase in our moral patiency will come as a result of AI's intrusion into 3 significant human arenas for moral agency. 1. The workplace and employment. 2. Political, legal, and bureaucratic decision-making. And 3. Leisure and personal activities. I mean, the question is, why do you break it down this way? You just say everywhere. I mean, you just want to break it down this way for what reason? This is some sort of, like, setup, I feel like. But, because, I mean, if you're not talking about work, and it's like work and then not work. It's everything, and then the government and not government. So, alright. So, we'll see where they're going. Intrusion into these arenas corresponds to 3 trends coinciding with the rise of the robots. I will argue, however, that Danaher's argument based upon the first trend needs to provide support for the assumption that robots will pursue a kind of takeover, for example, friendly, so as not to provoke human resistance and the exercise of our moral agency. So this is, do robots dream of electric sheep here? What are we talking about? Moreover, I argue that Danaher's argument based on the third trend needs to provide an argument for the important assumption that most people will succumb to the temptation of over-relying on AI for personal motivation and decision-making. Let us briefly discuss some terminology. Danaher distinguishes robots, which are systems capable of acting in the world, from AI, which need not have this capability. Instead, the latter are typically confined to a computer, which assists or offers instructions to humans. However, Danaher uses the two terms interchangeably, so have I above, granting him the connection, and often refers to both at the same time, as he argues that the crisis of moral patiency will result from our increased reliance upon both. A moral patient is a being who possesses some moral status, but who does not take ownership over the moral content of its own existence. Interesting. So it has moral status, but does not take ownership over it. Okay. So, like, would kids be moral patients in that case? Because they do have some moral status, but they're not in, like, they do not own their own moral status in some sense. They're still controlled by their parents. I mean, and what's the degree of ownership required for this? Because I'm subject of I'm a citizen of this United States of America, and they can do things to me that I can't stop. Basically, they've got a government and guns and things. So, what is the exact limit to what's the distinction here? I don't know, but we'll find out. Hopefully. In contrast, a moral agent is any being who is capable of taking ownership and moral responsibility for its own actions. Danaher is clear that he does not claim that the rise of robots will result in humans losing their status of moral agency and taking on that of moral patience. Instead, his thesis is that it will suppress the expression of agency-like qualities and increase that of patiency-like ones, to such a dramatic extent that affecting the majority of the population that he calls it a crisis of moral patiency having broad civilization-level significance. Those exhibiting agency-like qualities take care to gain moral insight in addition to planning and executing action to improve the world or their lives. Those exhibiting patiency-like ones have less moral understanding and ability to act in the world, though as moral patients they can feel pain and have their interests thwarted. Since patiency-like qualities are essentially passive qualities with respect to moral life, I will refer to moral patience as moral passivity. Okay. So it's a question of how passive you are with respect to moral issues. Okay, so how is AI going to make us more passive? With this basic terminology clarified, let us turn to Danaher's argument based on the first three trends identified earlier. Here, Danaher cites many other writers who argue that robots will replace nearly all human workers, ushering in an age of massive human unemployment. Hello, Andrew Yang. Not only this, but his insight here is that event would deprive humans of a crucial arena for expressing moral agency, as work employment provides for society's needs, is how we provide for our families, serves as a place to develop moral virtue, and can become a source of personal meaning. Well, I mean, there are other ways to do these things. I mean, this is sort of, assuming work is the only way to do any of these things is a little, pro-work. Now, if the rise of robots would render us all unemployed, and if this intrusion by AI were part of an otherwise friendly takeover, including even giving the basic income to each human, back to Andrew Yang again. We should agree with Danaher that this would be detrimental to our expression of moral agency. However, there is debate in the literature about whether the takeover would be friendly. Hello, Terminator 2. Danaher lists some writers who believe it would be friendly, but also who thinks AI could become an existential threat to us. Elsewhere, Bostrom and a co-author argue that despite the risk of such an unfriendly takeover, we can take steps to ensure AI will be friendly towards us. I don't know about that. We don't really have that much agency to control how other things think. Okay. While others are very skeptical and argue that all we can do is hope for the best. Yeah, it's probably what's right. Now, I think that if AIs are not friendly to humans, there is a great likelihood they would seek to destroy humans rather than merely take away our jobs while providing us with income. This is because humans might be useless to highly developed AI robots, which would be more task-effective and efficient, and also humans would just compete for valuable resources. Muehlhauser and Bostrom make this latter point about unfriendly AIs, writing that superintelligent machine with almost any final goal, say of solving the Riemann hypothesis, would want to take the resources we depend on for its own use. If this is true, then the ensuing hostilities against humans would provoke conflict would spur us to action, to exercising moral agency. If the robots succeed in destroying humans, then the problem would be annihilation instead of moral patiency. Now, perhaps Danaher would disagree that competition for resources would result in AI becoming unfriendly, or even dispute there would be significant competition. Whatever the case, Danaher needs to engage more with this debate about friendly versus unfriendly AI and strengthen his case by offering an argument that AI will be friendly in the way he envisions. Even granting Danaher the argument regarding the first trend of human unemployment, I argue that his argument regarding the third and last trend is in need of further support. To give context to his reasoning there, let me point out his overall argument strategy. First, he has argued that due to the first trend, we will be deprived of moral agency in employment. Second, after being shut out of the labor force, we might think that we can nonetheless exercise our moral agency in some other remaining area, legal, political, or bureaucratic decision-making. But due to the second trend, that machine learning algorithms will do this decision-making for us, this arena is no longer available to humans. Third, the final and only remaining area we might turn to is exercise moral agency in our personal lives and relationships. We could pursue the humanistic and intellectual pleasures, enhance our personal fitness and well-being, seek out meaningful relationships with others, and produce works of artistic beauty. I have a little aside here. The interrelation of the different things between legal, political, bureaucratic decision-making, and then work, and then also pleasure. When you start to affect one, you're going to affect the others. So the idea that AI is going to knock out one and then the other, but as it gets increasingly more powerful, sort of assumes that they are independent things that can be changed that will not affect the other one. So once one changes, the others are going to change along with it, assuming that everything doesn't change immediately all at once. And so I'm not sure that this sort of piecemeal approach actually understands the problem, because when you are doing when you change, say, work, you're going to need a massive political change to go along with that, and so it won't actually be so straightforward what it means to actually change the political arena and then also change the private arena. Okay, continuing. However, Danaher argues that here our moral agency will be all but eroded because of a third trend. This trend is that the rise of the robots would provide a host of AI personal assistants that would not only take our personal decisions for us, but also supply the motivation to follow through with action by cajoling and rewarding us. Okay, so this is basically the cell phones are giving you your little dopamine reward every few minutes to keep using them. Now, does that take away our personal agency? I don't think it takes away our agency any more than any other distraction in the past. So I'm not sure about that. So in a future world of highly developed AI algorithms that can do all this, humans would rarely make their own decisions, deepen an understanding of reasons for moral action, or cultivate their own character traits of courage and perseverance. Danaher envisions that humans will lead carefree lives, and he even muses that the likely emergence of pleasure bots would arguably give humans very pleasurable lives. But he is understandably alarmed that humans would not be exercising moral agency. What was that movie with Eva and the Pixar movie with the robots? Whatever, is where they're all sitting in a cruise ship on like moving chairs and they don't do anything all day. So that's where we're going with this. Danaher's argument from this third trend needs to be strengthened, however, because it assumes that the majority of people will largely succumb to the temptation of over-relying on these AI personal assistants. Earlier in his article, when he discusses sex robots and pleasure bots in general, Danaher appears to either assume or state as a possibility that most people would succumb to AI, constituting a civilization-level threat because of the pleasure and benefit they provide. Humans might become increasingly passive recipients of the benefits that technology bestows. The subtle way in which they play upon our psychological biases and temptations may be the problem. However, as this claim is either an assumption or expressed merely as a possibility, Danaher should provide some empirical or other reason to hold it. Otherwise, he would only have shown that the temptation exists, but not that most people would succumb to it or even create the crisis of moral patiency. Yeah, this is the same sort of argument you get with drugs. Like, hey, if you take drugs, you're just going to lose all your moral agency because all you're going to do is want the drugs. So we've had technology of this sort for a long time, actually. It wasn't AI, but it was biomedical technology. Thus, Danaher has not said anything to rule out that most people would likely exercise their moral agency by deciding not to over-rely on AI assistance in the first place. This sort of counter-argument gains traction because the trend under discussion implies that AI assistance would be maximally pervasive and intrusive in our personal lives, providing almost all of our decision-making and motivation, and thus it is reasonable to question that most people would allow it. Yeah, this is interesting. Like, do we have a what is exactly our motivation? Reasonable to question whether we'd allow it. What is our motivation to have moral agency? What is that drive that we have that we want to have moral agency? So if we don't understand what it is to have a drive towards moral agency, why would we assume we'd lose it just because some technological advance makes it easier to not have it? But if we have a drive to do it, it would just say, well, look, we want to have it because it is a good in itself. So that's a good question. This is a good question from the author. Okay, this finds further support in Robert Nozick's classic thought experiment about the experience machine. Suppose there were an experience machine that would give you any experience you desired. Should you plug into this machine for life, pre-programming your life's experience? This thought experiment may constitute an argument against the view that pleasure is all that matters in life, but that it is not my focus here. What is salient is that the example strikes a chord with many of its readers, leading them to conclude, due to several reasons, that they would not plug in. Here I am focusing on the question of would they, not even should they, plug in. Many want to be living their own lives autonomously instead of one run by the experience machine. Also, yeah, see, this is the Matrix right here. Again, this is another version of the Matrix. It's an experience machine, although we are in control of the Matrix. While they want to be a certain person with certain real character traits, also, they want to be a certain person with certain real character traits. These are what many readers want, even though the experience machine would provide them amazing pleasure and would also apply to why many people would just reject over-reliance on pleasure bots or convenient AI personal assistants. Now, it is true that not all Nozick's readers would think this way, but at least some significant proportion would. And so this counts in favor of people not succumbing to the temptation relevant to the third trend Danaher identifies. It is also true that despite most people's intention of avoiding becoming maximally dominated by AI personal assistants, they might nonetheless succumb to temptation when they are tested. However, the burden falls upon Danaher to demonstrate from empirical or other arguments that, in spite of these intentions, most of them will succumb, as he is advancing the positive argument that most people will become morally passive with the rise of the robots. For similar reasons, with regard to the first trend of unemployment, the onus is on Danaher to provide the need to support to show that the rise of the robots will be otherwise friendly to us in the first place. Okay, this was a fun short article. Questions of what do we think will actually happen to moral agency given a new technology. I think we've got two good questions here. This one from the author. If moral agency is good, why would we make AI that didn't maximize our moral agency as opposed to minimize it? I mean, we can of course be lazy, but if moral agency is good, then perhaps that is the direction our technology will go, because that is what we want to maximize, not laziness. Secondly, the idea that once AI gets involved in things, that the dichotomies that are currently set up, the way things are broken up in the world, are going to remain is not clear. So once we get AI into like the legal, bureaucratic, political, whatever decision making, things are going to change, and it may not look the same afterwards. And so the idea that it can just sort of knock out piece by piece parts of our world, I think, doesn't make entire sense, because things are going to change, and then the pieces won't look the same afterwards. Okie dokie. If any of the viewers have a question, let me know. Otherwise, I think I'm done with this paper. I hope you enjoyed it, and you have a good day. Stay safe, everybody. I'll be back later tonight, I think, with more. Maybe I'll play some Minesweeper. So have a good day. Bye-bye, and stay safe out there.